Once upon a time, there were two men, Galahad and Cinch. Both came from families of knights of the kingdom, and both would someday be expected to defend the kingdom from dragons and rescue those taken prisoner by the dragon. Cinch's parents sent him to 2 years of night school when he was old enough, and he tried to understand his teacher, but he had never been great in a classroom, and it was even harder to learn how to use a sword without ever actually handling one in battle. When he asked his parents for help with his schoolwork, they wanted to help, but they had the same training and didn't have much experience fighting dragons, having spent most of their lives around the castle. And when his parents asked around for help, nobody else knew much about fighting dragons either. On the other end of the kingdom was another young man named Galahad. In that part of the kingdom, the Duke trained the knights in fighting dragons so they could work together to train their children. Everyone had a sword and knew how to use it effectively, and they trained and practiced together all the time. Some of them studied up on dragon anatomy to find their weak spots. Others discovered new techniques in combat and weapon making, and others drew detailed maps of dragon hideouts and wrote songs to inspire the warriors. One day a dragon began threatening the kingdom, and Galahad and Cinch set out to rescue those being held captive and slay the dragon. Cinch set out, realized he'd forgotten his sword, went home, got his sword, and went looking for the dragon. Even though the dragon was next door to the castle, it took him 3 days to find it. When he finally found the dragon, he learned what his greatest qualities were. He was crunchy and good with ketchup. As the people wondered what they would do, a song was heard in the wind about mighty knights and dragon burgers. Over the horizon, the people saw beautiful, inspiring banners held aloft by knights in gleaming armor. Galahad led the charge, using the skills he'd honed his entire life, backed up by an army of friends and mentors. The battle was long and hard, but Galahad and friends vanquished the dragon and rescued those it had imprisoned. Then Galahad and some of his friends remained behind to live in Cinch's village and train future knights. Some complained that the 2-year night school was easier, but they were also tasty with ketchup. Sadly, this is a true story. The devil is on the prowl, seeking those he can devour, and he has taken 2/3 of the people of our community captive. Our king has called us to rescue them from the dragon, but once a week for 2 years in a confirmation classroom just doesn't provide the necessary training any more than you can learn to fight dragons in a classroom. Introducing DiscipleQuest, a lifelong quest for spiritual growth, discovery, and action. St. Paul tells us in Ephesians chapter 6, "Finally, receive your power from the Lord and from His mighty strength. Put on all the armor that God supplies. In this way you can take a stand against the devil's strategies. This is not a wrestling match against a human opponent. We are wrestling with rulers, authorities, the powers who govern this world of darkness, and spiritual forces that control evil in the heavenly world. For this reason, take up all the armor that God supplies. Then you will be able to take a stand during these evil days. Once you have overcome all obstacles, you will be able to stand your ground." DiscipleQuest begins in 4th grade or any time afterward and continues for a lifetime. Participants are taught to teach, trained to train, and coached to coach. While the process has milestones, every participant continues on as long as each draws breath. That's what it means to be a disciple of Jesus Christ. As participants grow in faith, they will find their tasks changing to reflect that growth. God's callings change throughout our lives, and that call tends to have more to do with our spiritual condition than our physical age. Your quest begins today. Pick up your sword, or the ketchup.